Today we take up a topic which is essentially to know the basic rights and duties of states. Now, before we take up the rights and duties of states, you should also know something for the relating to the establishment of a particular state, how it is being done. Now, when we take up this issue, most of the writers in international law go to the extent of saying that states and states are only the subjects of international law. Although they have said like this, no exact, definite and precise definition of a state is not possible. Although it is not possible to give an exact definition of a state, under the existing circumstances, it is possible for a student of law to give certain basic elements of a state. It was the Montevideo Convention of 1933, signed by United States as well as by a few Latin American countries. It gave essentially the four elements of a state. You may be interested to know what exactly are these elements of a state. Now, the first one is a permanent population. The second one, a defined territory. Then the government established by the people of that territory. Now, the fourth one is a capacity to enter into relationship with the outside world. Now, the population is an essential component of a state, and it should be a permanent population. This should not be a floating population. The people must have been settled, and they must have been settled in a particular area, and they establish a government of their own, and they owe habitual obedience to the government. But then, with all these things, remember, it is just not possible in international law to call it a state. It should have the capacity to enter into external relationship. That is why we distinguish states from other entities. When we speak about other entities, there are two or three other entities which come into the picture. One happen to be what we call as microstates. Microstates are small in area, small in population, and small in resources, but still they are called a state in international law. Now, we take up this discussion a little later, but then when we take up the concept of state, there are a few more things which are to be discussed here. Now, the question that is being put here is, now, can there be a state lacking geographical connection? The entire property or the concerned state is not situated in one area, but it is located in different places. Now, you take an instance relating to the state of Pakistan prior to the establishment of the state of Bangladesh. So, this was called as, one is East Pakistan as well as the West Pakistan. When once, remember, the Bangladeshis rose in revolt against the established regime of Pakistan, the state of Bangladesh became an independent state. But then prior to that, now it was proving that there could be a state lacking connections, but then it is entitled to exercise sovereign authority over it. Now, the second important thing is, when we speak about should the territory of a state be defined. Now, under the existing rules of international law, there need not be, the territory of a particular state need not be defined. It need not be defined for the simple reason, there is one instance. Israel, when it became a member of the United Nations in 1949, in the month of November, the territory of the state of Israel was not defined. Although it was not defined, it was admitted as a member of the international community and it became a member of the United Nations since that date. Now, the other aspect that is being spoken happened to be, now the division. Suppose, for example, Germany was a federal republic of Germany as well as the German Democratic Republic. During the course of the World War and after that, it split in 1940. And in 1990, they merged again into the Federal Republic of Germany, accepting the German Federal Republic law. No, but still it is considered as a state. Now these are some of the instances that is being given and spoken at length. But then what is important is the government of the day. This is called as the political will, the sovereign will. Now the sovereign will is an important concept, and it is the will of the people that establishes the government. When the sovereign will establishes the government, it will be in a position to carry out and carry forward its relationship with the outside world. Now when we take up this matter, the theory of Hans Kelsen is slightly diffident in answering the concept of the sovereign will. It is diffident for the simple reason it points out international law as well as municipal law operate on a different plane. International law operates in a different plane for the simple reason, remember, it is binding, it is to be respected. And it also has some of the basic rules which have to be respected by the state. And municipal law is a powerful system because it is made by the people, represented through their government, and it has to be adhered to. But then, when we speak of this, Hans Kelsen would go to the extent of pointing out that ultimately individual is the end of all laws. Since he is the end of all laws, remember, all laws are addressed to the individual, and a few of them are implemented through the machinery of the concerned state. That is how Kelsen tried to answer this question. Now, having discussed this much, a question came up once or twice before the court of law. Can there be a state, a contradiction in terms? Now this question came up in a beautiful case before the British court. Now you might be knowing the condition of Rhodesia. Rhodesia, without taking permission from the state of Great Britain, had enacted certain laws. And when it enacted certain laws, the laws were questioned before the British courts. Now the British court pointed out that the laws which are enacted by a de facto government naturally is an illegal law. Since it is illegal, it cannot be enforced and it need not be adhered to. That is where the Rhodesian legislation was nullified by the British court. It is not possible. Now there are plenty of other instances which would be given, but then we just try to speak to you something relating to the microstates. When we speak about the microstates are small in area, small in resources, small in population. This definition was given by U Thant, one of the Secretary Generals of the United Nations, in the year 1966 in one of his research papers. Now microstates are small in area. Now there are small areas. For example, take the instance of the state of Nauru. The state of Nauru is just above the equator near Australia, the coast of Australia. Just look to the map of Australia, above, near the equator, you find the state of Nauru. When the state of Nauru, which was established, it was just 3.2 square kilometers. And this 3.2 kilometers now has gone up to 7.5 square kilometers, has a population of 3,000. But it is still a state. Although it is still a state in the international community, no, it finds difficult to carry out the last proposition, that is to carry out its international obligations, which is just not possible. Because under the Charter of United Nations, Article 4 clearly points out a state first and foremost to be admitted to the members of the United Nations must be a state. State means it should have defined territory, it should have a population, it should have a government and a capacity to enter into external relationship. Now if you want to become a member of the United Nations, you have to undertake the charter obligations. Under Article 18-19, every member is supposed to contribute towards the maintenance of the United Nations. A microstate with a 3,000 population will not be in a position to contribute anything. Now that is why microstates are only given benefits rather than giving burdens. So they need not carry out any burdens, but only benefit is given. You may be interested to know what benefits are given today to the microstates under the present day international law. When this is being taken up for purpose of discussion, first and foremost, microstates can become parties to the International Court of Justice. So in the event of a dispute between the International Court of Justice, they can make use of the International Court of Justice so that the rules of international law is promoted, protected, refined and carried out. The other one is microstates are entitled to participate in regional meetings. Suppose, for example, a microstate is situated somewhere in the European continent, and you have what we call as the European Economic Community, you have the Council of Europe, and in its meeting it can participate and it can get the benefit. Simultaneously, not only it can participate in regional economic cooperation meetings, it can participate in international meetings as well. Now there are certain scholars who go to the extent of pointing out microstates should be given an associate membership of the United Nations. But most of the scholars in the field of international law point out microstates need not be given associate membership, because if that is done, it will create problems, because associate membership, if it has to be given, there should be an amendment to Article 4 of the Charter of United Nations. With the result, let them receive the benefits without accepting any burdens. Now thereafter, I wanted to speak to you, another important thing is trust territories. There were certain trust territories, and most of the trust territories today have become independent members of the international community. Now the administration of that trust territory has been taken over or taken care by another member. Now you take the instance which I have just mentioned earlier, the case relating to Southwest Africa or Namibia. The administration in Namibia was carried out by South Africa. South Africa was actually playing the role of taking care of the people of Namibia or Southwest Africa, protecting them, supposed to protect their human rights and report to the United Nations. So a trust territory is not a true state in a true sense of the term under the existing rules of international law. There are certain ordeals which has to be respected, because it has to report to the administering territory, and the administering territory in turn reports it to the United Nations. Now there are other types of territories. For example, there are certain states in international law whose external affairs is being regulated and controlled by a more powerful neighbor. Now when I speak about this, there are two instances which can be given. One is relating to the state of Sikkim. The state of Sikkim was an independent sovereign state, but then its external relationship was actually carried out and continued by the state of India. So naturally, remember, it does not enjoy the fourth characteristics which I have mentioned herein. So for everything, it has to rely upon the concerned state which used to carry out its foreign relationship. Now you take another example. Another example happened to be the state of Bahrain. Now today it's called the Kingdom of Bahrain. Kingdom of Bahrain was, remember, taken care, or its external policy was conducted by what we call as the state of United Kingdom. For all purposes, the state of England was responsible in carrying out its relationship with the outside world, and it could not be called as an independent sovereign state in international law. Now today, since 1973, it is an independent sovereign state. That is why it has become a kingdom, and it is called the Kingdom of Bahrain. Now having discussed this much, we just go to discuss something relating to what we call as the doctrine of basic rights and duties of states in international law. Now when we take up the basic rights and duties of states in international law, first I intend to tell you the sources. Now from where a student of international law can speak of the rights and duties of states in international law. The first one is the Institute of International Law of the State of United States had adopted a document. And this document, adopted by the Institute of International Law in 1916, speaks volumes about the doctrine of basic rights and duties of states. And thereafterwards, the second important document happened to be the Montevideo Convention of 1932. Now the Montevideo Convention naturally speaks about the basic rights and duties of international law. Now thereafterwards we have one more document, and this document is the Doctrine of Basic Rights and Duties of States. Remember, drafted by the International Law Commission in 1949. Now these are the few sources from where I can just give you some of the basic rights and rights of states. Now when we speak about the basic rights of states, one is the basic right of a state is of sovereignty, equality and independence. Each state is sovereignty. Each state is sovereign and is equal and it is independent. Now the second one is of territorial jurisdiction, and a third one is of self-defense. Now when we take up this matter of sovereignty, equality and independence, even remember Article 2, Paragraph 1 of the Charter of United Nations points out of sovereignty, equality and independence. This is a basic right of a state, one of the attributes of sovereignty that is being given to a particular state, which cannot be ignored by anybody. Now for example, take it this way. Now the sovereignty when we speak about, or the sovereign rights when we speak about, a state cannot enjoy the type of what we call as sovereignty which it used to enjoy earlier. Now for example, a state becomes a party to the Charter of United Nations. When it ratifies the Charter of United Nations, to that extent its sovereignty is gone. Suppose for example, a state when it signs and ratifies the WTO, naturally its freedom of action is restricted. Suppose for example, a state naturally signs the Chicago Convention of 1944. When it signs and ratifies and makes it part and parcel of the law, municipal law of the state, to that extent its sovereignty gets curtailed. Now suppose for example, take an instance relating to the Convention of the Law of the Sea of 1982. A state when it ratifies the Convention of the Law of the Sea of 1982, naturally its freedom as provided in the convention has to be carried out. Thus far, no further. If any activity which is not mentioned, of any activity which is in furtherance of the convention, naturally will be violative of the Convention of the Law of the Sea of 1982. That is where some of the writers of international law point out, today the very concept of sovereignty is a restricted term, and the concept of sovereignty is defined within the confines of international law. This is what Justice Angelotti in the famous Serbian loans case pointed out. Sovereignty is what international law confers. The concept of sovereignty is dwindled, it is curtailed, it is minimum. States are questionable, states are answerable at every forum if they violate the existing rules of international law. There may be instances wherein the states may be humiliated and they may be condemned for their own acts in the event of a violation or a gross breach of the existing rules of international law. Now when we go to the other one, sovereignty and independence, then of territorial jurisdiction. And when you speak about the territorial jurisdiction as well as self-defense, there are certain other basic rights that are being spoken at length. Now what is this territorial jurisdiction? Now the first right that is being spoken, it is also a right. The right of a state is of territorial jurisdiction. Then when we speak about territorial jurisdiction, of criminal jurisdiction. Suppose for example, a state is empowered to exercise jurisdiction both on nationals or foreigners who are present in the territory. In the event of a crime that is being perpetrated by a foreigner, the concerned state where the foreigner is present is empowered to exercise jurisdiction. Now the second one is the basic right of a state is to protect its citizens abroad. The state of India is empowered to protect its citizens abroad wherever they be. Now you might be knowing there were instances, plenty of instances wherein states have gone that far, wherein they declared war against another nation for violating the territorial integrity and sovereignty of another state. Simultaneously, they have declared war against another state for naturally harming or ill-treating its citizens. There are plenty of instances. For example, the state of United States has gone to the extent of rescuing its citizens who are in Mexico or Argentina or Chile or Ecuador, flouting all the norms. So this is one of the inherent powers which is conferred on the state. Simultaneously, the third one, the state is empowered to demand privileges and immunities to its diplomatic envoys. Naturally, remember, a state, in order to carry on its relationship with the outside world, sends a diplomatic envoys. When it sends diplomatic envoys, naturally they are treated and they are to be given privileges and immunities under the 1961 Vienna Convention on the privileges and immunities of diplomatic envoys. That has to be given, this has to be restored, and it can demand as of right. Now the other important development that is being spoken is the criminal jurisdiction, territorial jurisdiction, protection to its ambassadors, and what we call as the not to disturb, not to be disturbed by anybody. That is the purpose that is being spoken. Now when we speak about the basic duties of a state, I just told you there are three basic duties of a state. One is of not resorting to war. A state under the existing rules of international law is not supposed to resort to war. And you might be knowing the instances of the First World War as well as the Second World War. Now, expansionist policy of the state of Germany ultimately led to the Second World War. And after the Second World War, you know what has happened. And remember, the Charter of United Nations came in its place. And the Charter of United Nations does not support expansionist policies of any state. Of not resorting to war, then the second one is carry out faithfully the treaty obligations to which it is a party. Article 2, paragraph 3 of the Charter of United Nations points out it is a duty of a particular state to carry out faithfully the treaty obligations to which it is a party. Under no circumstances a state is empowered to violate this. It has to respect this. This is a basic duty of a state. Now the other one is, most important thing, not to perform acts of sovereignty in the territory of another state. Now when we take up this matter, not to perform acts of sovereignty in the territory of another state, this is one of the principles, one of the duties that is being imposed. Then not to help or abstain from helping its citizens from violating the territorial integrity and sovereignty of another state. Now the third one is not to intervene in the internal affairs of another state. We shall discuss one by one. Now the first one is not to perform acts of sovereignty in the territory of another state. A state is not supposed to indulge in activities thereby violate the territorial integrity of another state. And if that does, remember, the response will be very severe under the present day international law. You might be knowing Article 2, paragraph 4 of the Charter of United Nations. Article 2, paragraph 4 of the Charter of United Nations clearly points out, no state shall threaten the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of another state. And remember, it is a major principle of international law. Simultaneously, remember, when we take up this issue, there came a beautiful case before the Israeli court. Now you might be knowing the Second World War was about to come to an end. When the Second World War was about to come to an end, almost all the German Nazi criminals started escaping from the state of Germany. They knew after the conclusion of the war, the allied victorious powers led by the state of United States, United Kingdom, France and Soviet Russia will punish them. Now there was one German Nazi criminal and his name was Adolf Hitler. His name was Eichmann. Adolf Eichmann naturally, remember, escaped from the state of Germany to the state of Argentina. Having gone to the state of Argentina, he had undergone a plastic surgery. He started serving in a factory as an employee. Now the state of Israel came to be established in the year 1949. Now the state of Israel wanted to book and as well as hook and cook and try and punish these Nazi criminals. Now because most of the activities which was done by Eichmann were against the Jews. Now immediately when the state of Israel got independence, in a cabinet meeting they convened, they decided to appoint some special officers in search of Eichmann. And they were not able to find initially, but then later they found out this person is in the state of Argentina. The CID or the intelligence operations were so powerful, they found him out. But then without informing the state of Argentina, the Israeli security guards go to the state of Argentina, and having gone there, one fine morning when Adolf Eichmann, when he was just trying to go to the factory and when he was standing in a bus stop, he was, remember, hijacked from that place. Then he was kept in a particular place in Argentina. From there he was brought to the state of Israel, and then the trial started. And the trial started, then he was prosecuted, and Mr. Eichmann submitted a clemency petition to the President of Israel that was rejected. Now immediately as and when the state of Israel or the Israeli security guards hijacked Mr. Eichmann from the state of Argentina, the state of Argentina cried in protest. And it said, here is a case wherein the concerned the state of Israel has violated Argentina's sovereignty. It has perpetrated acts of sovereignty on the Argentinian territory. The matter came up before the Security Council of the United Nations. The Security Council passed a resolution saying that the state of Israel has violated the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of Argentina, and it is supposed to make compensation. But then compensation is yet to be made, and it was accepted that the matter is settled once for all. Now another important case that came up happened to be the Rainbow Warriors case. The Rainbow Warriors case was decided in 1986. Now what has happened was a Greenpeace movement vessel was actually in the New Zealand waters. When it was navigating in the New Zealand waters, and when the vessel was sunk, naturally the state of New Zealand came into the picture because it was done in its territory. The concerned persons were arrested and they were punished. Another important case which I just intend to discuss here is Vinayak Damodar Savarkar's case of 1911. Now Savarkar was arrested in England and he was charged with treason and abetment to murder. And he was conveyed in a boat known as Moria to the state of India for the sake of trial. Since the crimes were perpetrated by here in India, the British wanted him to be tried in the state of India. Now what has happened was Moria was taking its voyage, and Moria had stopped in the port of Marseilles, and the port of Marseilles happened to be a French territory. When it was taking shelter in the port of Marseilles, Mr. Savarkar escaped from the coast. He escaped from the coast, remember, and landed in the French territory. And when he was running in the French territory, the French authorities, without knowing, remember, handed over Mr. Savarkar to the French authorities. But then the French government demanded Mr. Savarkar from the state of England because he was in the French territory. When compromise was not possible, the matter was referred to the International Court of Arbitration. The International Court of Arbitration now pointed out there is no evidence as such to give a decision on customary rules of international law. But then it pointed out here is a case wherein the fault was actually committed by the French authorities. The French police, instead of keeping Savarkar with them, simply handed over Mr. Savarkar to the British authorities, and there is no point in pursuing the case. Now this is another important case that was discussed. Another important case happened to be the Corfu Channel case, which was decided by the International Court of Justice in 1949. This case naturally related to the performance of acts of sovereignty by a state in the territory of another state. Now, Corfu Channel is an international strait, and in international strait, passage to ships of all nations must be given by the littoral state. If the passage is not free, it is the duty of the littoral state to warn the navigating vessels, saying that the passage is not free. So instead of doing that, the state of Albania played mischief. Now what it had done was, on 16th May 1946, remember, the British war vessels were passing through the Corfu Channel. When they were passing through the Corfu channels, they were fired by the rocket batteries to the coast of Albania. The British government did not bother, and again, in the month of October, after 4 or 5 months, 3 more warships were passing through the coastal waters of the Corfu Channel. When they were passing through the Corfu Channel, they were struck with the mines, and these mines were actually put by the state of Albania. 21 days later, after exactly 21 days, the British war vessels came with the mine sweeping operation. They entered the Albanian territory, the coastal water. Having entered the Albanian coastal waters, they went on sweeping the mines and freed of all the mines from the coastal waters, and they carried on their navigation. The state of Albania, being a small state, objected to the act of sovereignty performed in the territory of Albania by the state of Great Britain. When compromise was not possible, the matter was referred to the Security Council. And before the Security Council of the United Nations, the state of Albania pointed out, by sweeping the mines, the state of England had violated the sovereignty of Albania. Now the state of England simply pointed out, the mines were put by the state of Albania, and it is the duty of the state of Albania to inform us, saying that the passage is not free. Here it has not informed them, and in an international state, the state must be kept, passage to ships of all nations must be free, and all the 24 hours it should be open. Instead of doing that, it has put the mines. It is an irreparable blunder. It cannot be sorted out. The matter went to the International Court of Justice, and the International Court of Justice pointed out, during peacetime, it is the duty of a state not to perform acts of sovereignty in the territory of another state. Here the state of Great Britain, being a permanent member of the Security Council, should have brought to the knowledge of the Security Council and should have prevented the state of Albania from doing such acts. Instead of doing such act, it had assumed and performed acts of sovereignty in the territory of the state of Albania, which cannot be acceptable, for which compensation has to be paid. Now the other important development was, here is a state which has not given freedom of passage, and it has denied the passage, and it has put mines in an international territory where voyage takes place all the time. For doing this, the state of Albania was directed by the International Court to pay compensation, and the state of Albania had to pay compensation, but then due to certain principles of international law, the judgment remains as it is a matter of discussion. The compensation is yet to be paid by the state of Albania to the state of Great Britain. So the point, what we understand here is, it is the duty of a state not to perform acts of sovereignty in the territory of another state. Now these are the best illustrations which are being given in the textbooks. Then we go to the other important, it is the duty, other duty of a state. It is the duty of a state to prevent its agents from performing acts of sovereignty in the territory of another state. Now what is this? It is the duty of a particular state to prevent its agents from performing acts of sovereignty in the territory of another state. When we take up this matter, what has happened is, there are plenty of sources as well for this. Now the first important thing is Article 4 of the Rights and Duties of States, sponsored by the International Law Commission of 1949. Article 4 of the Doctrine of Basic Rights and Duties of States makes it very clear. Under no circumstances a state should permit its subjects to violate the territorial integrity and sovereignty of another state. Simultaneously, it was in the year 1970 the famous Friendly Declaration on Cooperation among States was adopted. The friendly relations between states, cooperation between states, clearly highlights this principle, saying that states are not supposed to support its subjects to violate the sovereignty of another state. Now, the other one is for the purpose of prevent acts of terrorism. The OAS, that is the Organization of American States, had convened a conference. At the end of the conference, they adopted a declaration. And this declaration in Article 8 points out that it is the responsibility of state to see that its subjects don't violate the territorial integrity and sovereignty of another state. Simultaneously, it was in the year 1975, the Helsinki Declaration was adopted. In the Helsinki Declaration, the matter, that is the responsibility of a state not to allow its subjects to violate the territorial independence and the integrity of a foreign state is expressly stated. Now, these are the forces that is being given to us when we speak about this basic duty of a particular state. Now, one instance I just intend to speak to you. One instance happened to be an instance relating to the murder of King Alexander of Yugoslavia. Now, this monarch was murdered in Marseilles. It was a foreign territory. Now, the people and the Yugoslavian government blamed first and foremost the state of Hungary, because the conspiracy to murder this person, remember, had taken place in Hungary. And the entire plan was hatched in Hungary and it was executed in Marseilles. Now, this kind of activities are not supposed to be encouraged. Now, soon after this, after the discussion, the League Covenant, the League of Nations Assembly and the League Council rather adopted a resolution. In future, the states are not supposed to indulge in these type of acts and not to allow its agents in helping the concerned state to murder the head of a state in a foreign country.